Recorded. All right, I'll put the prayers on the screen. Whenever I say I put the prayers on the screen, I kind of, Madonna's Like a Prayer comes up in my mind. Think of doing the Vogue. All right. Whose understanding shines forth in the sun, unclouded by defilements or traces of ignorance, who teaches in 60 ways what a passion of love, Father for his knowledge, creatures caught in the prisons of sorrow, confused in the darkness of ignorance, bound by their suffering. Use dragon thought proclamation of the Dharma, arises from the stupor of our delusions and frees us from the iron chains of our karma. Whose powerful sword of wisdom hews down suffering, whatever it sprouts, away the darkness of all ignorance. Straightening O Manjushri, princely bow, is adorned with the 112 marks of a Buddha, who has completed the 10 stages of achieving the highest perfection of a Bodhisattva, who has been pure from the beginning. O Manjushri, O loving one, with your brilliance of your wisdom, illuminate the darkness and close in my mind, enlighten my intelligence and wisdom so that I may gain insight into the Buddha's words and the texts that explain them. And refuge in bodhicitta. Cholan soki chonamba, chanchu badu dani kapsu, dagi chinegi petsonangi, dola penchi sange do pasho. Cholan soki chonamba, chanchu badu dani kapsu, dagi chinegi petsonangi, dola penchi sange do pasho. Cholan soki chonamba, chanchu badu dani kapsu, dagi chinegi petsonangi, dola penchi sange do pasho. All right, so there's a question if we're recording the session. So we are. I am recording the session on my computer. Then also Jason and Kathy are recording it as backup. And at the end of the session, we normally upload it to YouTube. So it's all there. So first of all, good week, everyone. How was your weekend? How was the weekend of people at home? I guess they was okay. So far, I had, I think, 5 or 6 people who have returned their exam sheets, and I've already marked them. So people are doing really well. Thank you very much. For those people who are still planning to do that, please do. I think that it's a good way to study, at least to revise the material. Can you hear me with the rain?
Yeah. No rain down here in Sydney.
All right, so maybe we can do for the people here at the Gompa, maybe we can later on tomorrow maybe bring the mic back so that you can hear Geshe and myself. Anyway, what I thought of doing today was briefly to go over the list of benefits of bodhicitta, but I'm not planning to spend time explaining each one of them or revising each one of them, because Geshe today started speaking of bodhicitta and the different classifications and nature of bodhicitta. I think that this is essential to be able to pull out a few points from that discussion. And I think that it's going to take us probably all this week to do it, right? So I want to spend more time in looking at what bodhicitta is, what are the 2 aspirations, what is engaging bodhicitta, what is in aspiring bodhicitta, what is ultimate bodhicitta, what is conventional bodhicitta, so that we'll be able to become more clear. So, how many benefits have we covered last week? How many benefits of bodhicitta? Well, it was 4 in the review questions and also in the exam for 4. We covered, I think, 6, right? So altogether, when I pulled out from the text a list of benefits, I came up with a list of 8 benefits. But when you look at other texts, including, I think, Lama Tsongkhapa's Lamrim Chenmo, you can come up with more benefits of bodhicitta, of course, why would it be limited only to 8 benefits? In the other commentary by Kempo Kumpel, it said that bodhicitta, in one text, in one sutra, there were hundreds of benefits that were mentioned benefits of bodhicitta. Each one of them was explained by a different teacher. So, of course, you can come up with so many more benefits of bodhicitta. It would be incredible. But in our text, at least in the verses that we've covered up until now, I think that I came up with a list of 8. So I'll put them on the screen, see if we can just follow them. And if you have some other, if you've done your own study and summary and you came up with a list of more, then of course you can share it with us. I'll just try to see what it takes, what the file is. Okay. So, okay. So the list that I came up with of the benefits of bodhicitta is, the first one, it is destroying great negativities. And you might remember that the text says that it has a stronger power to destroy negativities. Not unlike all other virtues, this one has a particularly strong power in obliterating negativities. That's the first one. The second was that it has the potential to accomplish supreme bliss. And we said that supreme bliss refers to the state of Buddhahood, right? The third was the potential to accomplish whatever one wishes. The fourth was attaining a special name and purpose. Then we had the analogies that were explaining the text. Some of the analogies were repeating, I think, some of the benefits that we have had before. And some of them, I think, introduced a new benefit to bodhicitta. So it transforms the impure body into a Buddha body. That's one benefit. Then you will be able to dispel the poverty of sentient beings. I think that that's another benefit. So there was this analogy of like a jewel, like a chief of jewel or something like that. I can't remember. Let's look at the verse. Since the sole helmets of migrating beings, the limitless mind, verse 11, has upon, through investigation, seen its preciousness, all beings wishing to be free from the abodes of migration, firmly seize this precious mind of enlightenment. So I think that in a commentary it says that it is like this precious jewel that has the ability to dispel the poverty of sentient beings. So I think that you can list it as a separate benefit. Then the results of bodhicitta would be unending. And we had a discussion last week, according to Jen's question. We said that because the motivation that you set with bodhicitta is to free all sentient beings from suffering. And for that end, you'll do anything that is needed in order to become a Buddha so that you'd be able to benefit all sentient beings. Then all virtues that are motivated by that will still continue to produce their own results until you attain the state of enlightenment. So in that sense, the result would be unending. The result would not be limited. Then the last one, and this is, I think, a verse that we've covered today, you would be protected from great danger. That was in verse 13. Yeah. Like, depending on a hero when greatly afraid, even if I may have committed very terrible negativities, I shall be swiftly liberated. It depends upon it. Why then do those who have the imprints not depend on it? In some sense, you can say that it's similar to the first benefit that we've covered, in that it has the power to eliminate great negativities. So Dechen Lai is saying, put it again, put it again. So I'll put it again. All right, no worries. Is it all right?
Please don't stop talking.
Ah, all right, cool. Your wish is my command, Dechen. Just today. All right, so these are the benefits that I was able to pull out. But again, I think that if you go through the text and you read through it again and again, you know, maybe you'll find another way of looking at the benefits, pull something else from that explanation, look at other sources and pull some more benefits. The whole idea is that you want to be totally inspired to develop bodhicitta. It's just like, I think other skills that you might develop. I think that, you know, sometimes when you look at the choice of professions the people go into, right? So, you know, there's certain things that, you know, some people do take up a job like being a plumber or a dentist assistant, or, you know, some other jobs. Some people really like doing those jobs. No, to me, these type of jobs are not appealing. But I guess that the reason for taking up something like that, like for example, taking plumbing up, is that you probably think that it's going to pay really well. I'm going to be able to be my own boss, or be able to have flexible time. I'd be able to be at home at 5 o'clock and I would make a lot of money. So you think of the benefits and then you go and get training. So of course, being a bodhisattva is not about plumbing, right? You're not, you know, it's not the same thing, but it's the same. I think that the same principle applies in that kind of, if you think of something that would give you this enormous benefit, and then you become totally inspired to take up this training. But it works sometimes in a way that is really interesting, because sometimes we become more enthused about getting a profession, like, you know, that will pay us a lot of money, being a plumber or dentist assistant or whatever. We do trust that the mind of enlightenment is good, but still we become more enthused about things that belong to this lifetime only, kind of those benefits, those pleasures that belong to this lifetime only, and to some degree less inspired about bodhicitta. I mean, I'm speaking personally about myself. That's how it happens to me. So maybe you guys are sometimes in a similar situation, but Shantideva here, first of all, begins this great explanation of the benefits of bodhicitta in order for us to think that definitely this is what I need to be doing with my time. This is the way to extract the essence of freedoms and opportunities. So, any questions before I move on?
So that list,
Yeah.
is that one that you've created? Or is it one that's taken from Kenpo's commentary?
No, this is what I created. I can share it.
Right.
So I have a doubt to put out. There may be for another time, and to no doubt frustrate. A perfect human rebirth is not rare, because if we have been taking rebirth since beginningless time, it means we had every rebirth conceivable limitless times, including a precious human rebirth. Thus, from this perspective, precious human rebirth is not rare. Sorry. All right. Anyone feel frustrated? So jump up, worry not. People do not feel frustrated. I'd say that probably you could say, you could say that, yeah, we've taken precious human rebirths before. I'm not sure that you would say that we've done that limitless time. I guess that maybe we would say that in comparison with a number of other types of rebirth that we've taken, particularly miserable types of rebirth, in comparison with that, it is quite rare. Anyway, Carrie, did you put your hand up? Probably not. Let's continue with bodhicitta, because I think that we need to spend more time on bodhicitta and to get some clarity. So what I've done at home was I prepared a file with notes about bodhicitta, and I'm going to put it on the Dropbox and also send it through to Kathy to distribute it amongst, of course, participants. Where is it? I'm going to open it again. All right, so the file that I've created has a few sections. I'm just going to introduce it. So first of all, I want to become clear about distinguishing minds and mental factors, main minds and mental factors, because this information is crucial to understanding what bodhicitta is. So there's some information that I included here. We're not going to talk about all of it, but it's going to be in the file. Take the time to look at it later. Then I wanted to talk about the procedure for developing bodhicitta. Normally we speak about the two procedures: equalizing, exchanging self with others, and the sevenfold cause and effect personal instruction. So today I thought of speaking about the second procedure. Then classification of bodhicitta, we've spoken about it today. And I think that most of the time that we'll spend together in the next few days, we'll be looking at the definitions of the conventional and ultimate mind of enlightenment and aspiring and engaging mind of enlightenment. So don't worry if you don't have the time to write everything down now. I mean, it will be, the file will be available to you, but of course, if you want to add your notes to it, then please take notes. You know, I'm not being too bossy, I hope. So first of all, the mind of enlightenment. The mind of enlightenment is a main mind. So this is one bit that I wanted for us to hold on to. Want to hold on to now. The mind of enlightenment is a main mind. So we have main minds and mental factors. Is there anyone that hasn't heard those terms before? Main minds and mental factors? Is there anyone that is hearing those terms for the first time today? I mean, it's okay not to know exactly what they are. All right. So first of all, when consciousness is classified, in the text on mind and mental factors, we speak about two types of consciousnesses. There are different ways of classifying consciousness. One way of classifying consciousness is into main minds and mental factors. So let's look at what the difference between them. So I pulled out in this file a few sources. We've studied this topic before, and we will study it again next year in the Buddhist study program. So the definition is a main mind is a main knower that is posited by way of apprehending the entity of its object. It's kind of, it doesn't tell you a lot, does it? I mean, you can understand the words. You can put maybe a couple of words together, string them together, but to have a general idea about exactly what it is, it's still, I think, a little bit hard if you just read it like that. Let's read through the definition of mental factor and then see how these two come together. So a mental factor that apprehends any of the features of its object and accompanies whatever main mind has similarity with it. That's a mental factor. So those are the definition of minds and mental factors. Now we can look at examples in order to illustrate that. So for example, I have an eye consciousness that sees Maggie, that sees the body of Maggie, the form of Maggie, that sees this table and so forth. Do you agree that this eye consciousness is consciousness? Is it a consciousness? Yeah. It is a consciousness, right? It's not a tricky question. Eye consciousness is a consciousness. Now, when it is classified, you can say that there is a main mind a main, you can say a primary I consciousness, a main I mind. It's weird. In English, we think that mind is only mental. In Buddhist philosophy, we have different types of minds, right? So there is body mind, eye mind, ear mind, nose mind, tongue mind. It's just different way of using the word mind in Tibetan. In English, we normally think of mind as just being mental. In Tibetan philosophy, mind is the 5 physical consciousnesses and also the mental mind. Anyway, so we have a main mind, main I consciousness, main mind. And also it has mental factors that work together with it. So the role of the main I consciousness, the primary I consciousness, is to apprehend the entity of the object. So for example, I see, when I look at Maggie, we have Maggie as the object in general. It apprehends the main entity of the object. Then I have mental factors that work together with the I consciousness. Like for example, the 5 omnipresent mental factors: feeling or sensation of pleasure, pain, or neutral sensation. So the primary consciousness apprehends the object, Maggie, sensation experiences pleasure, pain, or it's an experience of pleasure and pain or neutral sensation in observing Maggie. Then discrimination is another mental factor that operates together with the main mind. Discriminating it like it is this or it is not this. Then intention, the mental factor intention, that which rouses the mind and moves it to the object, right? So while my primary I consciousness is observing the general object, the object is Maggie, you have the mental factor intention that has this function of drawing the mind or moving the mind towards Maggie, right? So it's a certain functionality that was singled out, and it is called intention. Then I have contact. Also, that a mental factor that is called contact, independent upon which feeling is distinguished. Then I have the mental factor attention, also which is an omnipresent mental factor. You don't have to write all of them down. I'm just kind of giving an example of how you have like this consciousness that apprehends the main entity, and then mental factors, each one of them has its own particular function, or it apprehends a certain feature of the object. Right? So attention, that which kind of moves the mind to a specific object. So you have intention and attention. So intention is that which moves the mind to the object, and attention towards something that is specific. Chris is saying, could I put the definition of mental factor up again, please? I can, and it will also be on the Dropbox, right? So an order that apprehends any of the features of its object and accompanies whatever main mind has similarity with it. So a main mind works together with a group of mental factors. Each of those mental factors has its own function or feature, particular thing that it does. So you have the 5 the 5 omnipresent mental factors that we've just mentioned. Geshe today in his session mentioned the group of 5. So feeling, discrimination, intention, contact, and attention. Then Geshe today mentioned another group of mental factors that are called the object ascertaining mental factors that are there with a conceptual consciousness. As the group suggests, they're object ascertaining in a sense that it helps the main mind to ascertain a certain object. So we have aspiration. This is a mental factor that is crucial to our discussion. Aspiration, that's the first mental factor. Then the second mental factor in that, I'm just kind of giving you names. It's not, you don't have to be overly concerned now with the list. So aspiration. Then we have conviction, mindfulness, wisdom or concentration, concentration or samadhi, and wisdom. So these 5 object ascertaining mental factors work together with the main mind in order to engage its object, in order to apprehend its object. So the main mind will apprehend the general entity, the entity of the object, where mindfulness will have its own function, wisdom will have its own function, concentration will have its own function, aspiration will have its own function. Right? So each one of them has its own particular area of expertise. You know, this is in a very loose language. So why are we speaking about it? Because first of all, bodhicitta is a main mind. It is not a mental factor, it is a main mind. If it's a main mind, it means that it has a group of mental factors that work together with it. Not only it's a main mind, for sentient beings, it is a mental consciousness, right? So it's a primary mental consciousness. If it is a primary main mind, it is a mental one. It has a group of mental factors that work together with it, that accompany it. And to accompany it means that they share similarities with the main mind in terms of, for example, the time, the aspect, the support that they rely upon. They share similarities that are concordant, that are congruent with the main mind that they're in the retinue with. That's, I think, creating the foundation for speaking about the mind of enlightenment. So what do we need to hold on to from this explanation? That the main mind is, that the mind of enlightenment is a main mind. It is a main mental consciousness. Primary mental consciousness. That's something that you can write down, definitely.
And that there will be a question, I'm not sure.
There will be questions. Whether they will make it to the exam, we will still see. But Madhu?
So, is the main mind and mind of enlightenment synonymous, or
so is the main mind? So is the main mind and the mind of enlightenment are they synonymous?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, so they're not synonymous. So
or the mental consciousness.
No, they're not synonymous. So the mind of enlightenment is a type of main mind. It is a type of mental consciousness. So how would I, if I were to speak about it in a philosophical debate language, I would say that if it's bodhicitta, and now I'm speaking about a sentient being, not a Buddha, right? So for us, sentient being, if it is bodhicitta, it is necessarily a mental consciousness. It is certainly a primary mental consciousness. It is necessarily a primary mental consciousness. If it's a primary mental consciousness, it's not necessarily bodhicitta.
Right.
So if it's a primary mental consciousness, it's not necessarily bodhicitta. Can you give an example of a primary mental consciousness that is not bodhicitta? Anger, attachment, ignorance. Actually, they're mental factors. So eye consciousness. Yeah, but I said that if it's a primary mental consciousness, if it's an example of a primary mental consciousness that is not bodhicitta, I would add something to Madhu's answer. So Madhu mentioned attachment, anger, and so forth. So these are mental factors. I mean, we haven't studied this material yet, so don't worry about making mistakes in that sense. But you can say the main mind that has the primary mental consciousness that has anger in its retinue. Anger is a mental factor. So the main mind that is concordant with anger would be an example of a primary mental consciousness that is not bodhicitta.
Self-cherishing?
Self-cherishing, yeah, you can say self-cherishing. A realization of emptiness.
Is a primary mental factor?
Well, you can say that, for example, a realization of emptiness that is a primary mental consciousness is an example of a primary mental consciousness that is not bodhicitta. But anyway, I think that we get the gist of it.
Because I too can say that self-cherishing is another primary.
Yeah, I think that you can say that self-cherishing, there is a primary consciousness.
Yes.
I mean, kind of when I had that is a primary consciousness, I add that just kind of in order to prevent debate, to be more precise. So I say self-cherishing, that is a primary consciousness, is an example of a primary mental consciousness that is not the mind of enlightenment.
Sorry, what did you say?
Is an example of a primary mental consciousness that is not the mind of enlightenment. All right, so why am I speaking about that? Because looking at the most basic definition of bodhicitta, the one that is the easiest one to hold on to, it is the mind that has the two aspirations. That's the most basic definition of bodhicitta. The mind that has the two aspirations, the mind that possesses the two aspirations, is the mind of enlightenment. It still doesn't tell you a lot, right? So what we want to do now is to find out what does it mean to possess the two aspirations? What are the two aspirations? How does the mind of enlightenment possess or has those two aspirations? This is the next point in our discussion. Any questions so far? All right, so let's look at the procedure for developing bodhicitta. Before we look at the procedure, there are two, as I said before, there are two practices for developing bodhicitta. All of you have heard about them, the sevenfold cause and effect personal instructions and equalizing exchanging self with others. So who taught the sevenfold cause and effect personal instructions? Do you remember?
It was a commentary on the 8 verses, wasn't it?
In the commentary of the 8 verses, maybe? Atisha. Did I hear Atisha?
Yes,
Yeah, so that's correct. Atisha taught in the Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment, the sevenfold cause and effect personal instructions. Sometimes it is considered to be a practice that is for those of lesser faculties. In that sense, you could say that it is an easier practice. It's funny when you say that it's a practice for those of lesser faculties. It sounds like it's bodhicitta for dummies, but it's certainly not the case. No, this is a practice for bodhisattvas. No, it's not bodhisattva. It's not bodhicitta for dummies. But in some sense, it is said that it is an easier method. Now, the second practice is the practice of equalizing and exchanging self with others, taught by people at home. Sorry?
I think the same person, Atisha.
Not by Atisha. Surprisingly, Shantideva. Actually, we are going to cover that in the 8th chapter. So here in Shantideva's Guide to Bodhisattva of Life, it teaches equalizing and exchanging self with others, and that will be taught in chapter number 8. So it's also interesting when you look at the different lineages of instruction. So we have Atisha that combine different lineages together. The lineage that came from let's say from Nagarjuna through to his personal teacher Vidya Kukila the Younger. This is where he got mainly got the instructions on the profound view. Then you have the system of the practice. Now, in the famous story of Atisha, we said that he got the instructions on bodhicitta from Lama Selimpa, right? So, and those instructions came from Maitreya. But on top of that, there's like a third lineage. You know, he got many lineages, but he got another lineage, which is called the third lineage, and it's a lineage on practice, on method, that he got from Manjushri, right? So one method side came from Maitreya, but there's another practice side on method side that came from Manjushri, and that is the system of equalizing and exchanging self with others. And that is what is taught here in Shantideva's guide. So,
who did Manjushri give it to? Shantideva. Yes, yes.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if Manjushri gave it directly to Atisha, but Atisha got the lineage that came from Manjushri, and the lineage for equalizing, exchanging self with others is a practice lineage that is said to be coming from Manjushri. So, why am I mentioning that? Because this system is considered to be more for sharp faculties bodhisattvas. Sharp faculties. No, yeah, yeah. Those are for the. Yeah, sorry. You need to. Maybe I need to get training from you. Sharp faculties bodhisattvas. Anyway,
Are they the opposite of sharp weapons?
What? Sorry.
A sharp faculty is the opposite of sharp weapons. You know, we have that book, the.
No, it's not the opposite. I think kind of they're just sharp faculties bodhisattvas, and the will of sharp weapons is something else. It's just a name of a text. So sharp faculties bodhisattvas. So before, by the way, I think that it was said before that the sevenfold cause and effect personal instruction is easier to some degree, because you're looking at the conducive conditions that you need to assemble in order to develop bodhicitta. Right? So you're dealing with the conducive side. With equalizing and exchanging self with others, what you're doing directly is undermining your self-cherishing attitude, which is harder. So kind of harder. Harder. Say harder? Harder. Obviously, kind of in terms of accent, I'm totally dull faculty. I'm not a sharp faculty person. So kind of since you're working with what is adverse to bodhicitta, it's much harder. Harder. Anyway, so what I wanted to look at today is the sevenfold cause and effect personal instructions, because in that practice, it is very easy to identify what the two aspirations are, right? We said that the mind of enlightenment is that which has the two aspirations. So in the sevenfold cause and effect practice, we can pin them down really clearly. So what are the sevenfold cause and effect personal instructions? What's the first stage? Recognizing mother. Yeah. Second stage? Recognizing the kindness. Third stage? Developing the wish to repay the kindness. That's correct. The fourth one? Loving kindness. Carry it home, also say LK. Loving kindness. The fifth stage? Compassion, or even great compassion. Sixth stage, sorry. Highest intention. In the Lamrim Chemo, the highest intention is called the wholehearted resolve. Yeah, wholehearted resolve. It's more like I think a very nice description of this stage. You become, your resolve is wholehearted. Then the seventh stage is bodhicitta. Yeah, surprisingly, the seventh stage is bodhicitta. So we have 7 stages, right? 6 causes, 1 effect. Before the first cause, what was after repay kindness? So love. Sometimes we call it loving kindness. Sometimes we say affectionate love, right? So after the wish to repay the kindness, after that, affectionate love or loving kindness. So before we go through the first stage, which is recognizing sentient beings as having been unmothered, what's the preliminary stage? Equanimity. Yeah. So this is correct. So I'll put my my procedure on the screen. So the sevenfold cause and effect personal instructions for developing bodhicitta. Stage 0, that's ground 0. Develop equanimity. Or since in the Lamrim Chenmo, they call it impartiality, in which you develop that equal sense of concern for others. So it's not that equanimity in terms of you don't care about sentient beings equally, kind of that equal sense of disregard. It's rather that you regard all of them with that sense of affection, I reckon, but or you have an equal sense of care for others. So then you recognize them as mothers, mother sentient beings. You become mindful of their kindness, so you think of their kindness. Sometimes we say recollecting the kindness of mother sentient beings, but I don't know, to my understanding of English, to recollect something, you need to remember it. But if we don't remember our past lives, how can we remember how a mother was kind to us in the past? So the same word in Tibetan, chemba, can also be translated as thinking of something or becoming mindful of it. So here particularly, you think of how sentient beings have been kind to you at the time of being your mother, right? So you don't remember it, but you can still think about it. Then the third stage, developing the wish to repay the kindness. Fourth stage is love or loving kindness, affectionate love. Fifth stage is compassion. Sixth stage is the wholehearted resolve. And the seventh stage is the mind of enlightenment or bodhicitta. So the fifth stage is compassion or great compassion, right? In wishing for all sentient beings to be free from suffering. Now, before when we studied this topic with Geshe Jamin, we looked at the next stage, which is the wholehearted resolve. So the way that Geshe Jamin spoke about it, and I think that also Geshe Tsultrim speaks about it in a similar way, is that the wholehearted resolve is a type of compassion, but it is a stronger type of compassion. So both of them are great compassion. In the fifth stage with great compassion, it is compassion that wishes sentient beings to be free from suffering. May all sentient beings be free from suffering. That's wishing for freedom kind of compassion. Now, you've thought about it for such a long time when you develop bodhicitta that at some point you think that this is my responsibility to make that happen, right? This is for me to liberate sentient beings from suffering. So this is called protecting compassion.
Protecting.
Yeah, protecting or protective. You want to protect sentient beings from suffering. It's not just a wish for them to be free from suffering. You think it is my burden to take. So that's protective compassion. Both of them are types of great compassion. But obviously the sixth one is much stronger because you think this is my job to do it. Is it clear? All right, so let's speak about the aspirations. I'll put it on the board. So when you develop the fifth and sixth stages, we said that both of them, actually, I'll move this, sorry. So both of them are great compassion. Stage number 5 and stage number 6, both of them are great compassion, but the wholehearted resolve is much stronger. You take upon yourself the responsibility to free sentient beings from suffering. And this is protective compassion. So this, in those two stages, you have the causal aspiration. The causal aspiration is compassion. It is the one that is intent on the purpose of others. Right? What is the purpose of others? Freedom from suffering. So in relation to that, I wanted to point out what the mental factor aspiration is. So we said that aspiration is one of the 5 object ascertaining mental factors. It accompanies a main mind, which is bodhicitta. It accompanies the main mind, erase that bodhicitta stuff. It accompanies a mental primary consciousness. So aspiration, I'll put it on the board again. It observes a contemplated phenomenon and it seeks it. It strives at it. In some sense, you can say it wants it. And it acts as a support for making effort. This is how aspiration is glossed in the text on minds and mental factors. So compassion is, so number 5 and number 6, you establish the causal aspiration, which is a compassionate aspiration. What you wish for, what you aspire, what you observe is sentient beings' freedom from suffering. So you have a main mind, right? A main mental consciousness. And in the retinue of a mental consciousness, you have aspiration. Aspiration that observes sentient beings and wishes them to be free from suffering, let's say. That's in a really loose sense. So you put them together into a package, right? You have a consciousness that wishes sentient beings to be free from suffering. But when you look at the operation of this consciousness, you see that there is a main mind that kind of apprehends the entity of the object, and then mental factors that have their own particular operations, functions. One of them is aspiration. Aspiration observes a contemplated object and seeks it. So it observes sentient beings, suffering sentient beings, freedom from suffering. It seeks that. So then that's the cause, compassion, right? So we said that great compassion is the cause for bodhicitta, right? Great compassion is the cause for bodhicitta. So when you look at it from the viewpoint of the 7-fold cause and effect personal instructions, stages 5 and 6, in which you generate compassion and great compassion, even stronger sense of compassion, these are the causes for stage 7 when you have the mind of enlightenment. So we spoke about the first aspiration, right? The mind of enlightenment has the 2 aspirations. First one is a compassionate aspiration, which is a causal aspiration. Now, let's make it complicated, if it's not complicated enough. A main mind can have only one type of mental factor in its retinue at the same time, which means that the main mind can have only one aspiration at any given time. It cannot have 2 aspirations present that are different, that exist at the same time in the retinue with that exact particular main mind. So we first of all had the causal aspiration. This is compassion. Now, in the 6th stage, we had great compassion that wishes for, that thinks, I will liberate sentient beings from suffering. And normally when we meditate on bodhicitta, we think that currently I don't have the power to liberate sentient beings from suffering. Where is the ability to do that? Only a Buddha has the ability to do that, because only a Buddha has the ability to know the disposition of each and every sentient beings and to know what teachings each and every one of them needs in order to lead them along the way for freedom from suffering. Currently, I don't have that knowledge. I cannot teach each and every sentient beings what they need. Only if I were to become a Buddha, I would be able to do that. So thereby, we give rise to bodhicitta, right? So then, bodhicitta, as we said, is the main mind. It has in its retinue a group of mental factors. The mental factor aspiration that is together with bodhicitta is called the accompanying aspiration. And it is the aspiration that observes complete enlightenment and seeks it. Seeks it. It wants it. It seeks it.
Seeks.
I think that maybe that's, I need to kind of put you next to me so that maybe you'll understand me better. I can yell at you. So we have the accompanying aspiration, the one that seeks the state of enlightenment. It observes complete enlightenment and it wants it, it seeks it. It is together at the same time with that primary mental consciousness that is the mind of enlightenment. So again, going back to the two aspirations, to the most simple way of defining the mind of enlightenment. It is the mind that has the two aspirations. What are the two aspirations? First of all, the causal aspiration, which is compassion, in order to liberate sentient beings from suffering. The second aspiration is the accompanying aspiration.
Resultant.
Sorry?
Resultant or accompanying?
Accompanying. Yeah, so you have the causal aspiration and then the accompanying aspiration. It's called the accompanying aspiration because it accompanies the mind of enlightenment. It is together in the same retinue with the mind of enlightenment. Yeah.
So we're talking about the same thing.
What do you mean talking about the same thing?
Accompanying aspiration is a factor of the mind and enlightenment.
It is a mental factor in the retinue that is concordant with the mind of enlightenment. It is one of the mental factors that is in the retinue of the mind of enlightenment. So the thing is that we say that the mind of enlightenment has those two aspirations. And when we explain the mind of enlightenment in a general way, we say that it is the wish for complete enlightenment for others' welfare. Actually, this is how I think that when you look at the ornament for clear realization, in the first chapter of the ornament for clear realization, one of the first topics that we come across is omniscience, and then bodhicitta, or mind generation. This is how it is called often, mind generation. So mind generation is the wish for complete enlightenment for the purpose of others. So in that sense, you combine those two aspirations together. For the welfare of others, that's compassion. The wish for complete enlightenment is the aspiration, the accompanying aspiration. So it is a mind that has those two aspirations. It doesn't mean to say that they exist at the same time. One of them was the cause, that's compassion. The one that is together with it is the accompanying aspiration. So combining those two aspirations, the causal one, and the one that is together with bodhicitta, we have the mind that has the two aspirations. It's complicated, isn't it?
So what I'm going to put down, like 5 and 6 of the 7 causes, are the causal aspiration, and 7, bodhicitta, is the accompanying.
So,
yes or no?
Yes and no. Yeah. I think that you're right. You're right in kind of delineating the stages. But if I were to be more precise with how I would explain it, I would say in stages 5 and 6, you cultivate those causal aspirations, right? And you go through a process through which you become more and more intense in your aspiration for sentient beings' freedom from suffering. How wonderful it would be if sentient beings would be free from suffering. I will free them from suffering. So in those stages, you cultivate those aspirations, but it's not that the only thing that you cultivate is an aspiration, because aspiration is just one mental factor that is together with that main mind. Also other mental factors together with it in the main mind. So when we say that you, in stages 5 and 6, you develop compassion and the wholehearted resolve, you develop both main minds and mental factors. But if you wonder where this aspiration as a mental factor developed, it is developed along stages 5 and 6, when you, in your analytical meditation, you become more and more intent on separating or liberating sentient beings from suffering. Then in stage 7, you generate bodhicitta, but generating bodhicitta we said bodhicitta is a main mind. So it's like a flow-on effect from the previous stages. You had a main mind that had aspiration that is concordant with it. Because of that aspiration to free sentient beings from suffering, and then in your mental process thinking that in order to make that happen, I need to become a Buddha. Then you develop a main mind that is bodhicitta, thinking that for the sake of liberating all sentient beings, I would attain the state of Buddha. So with that main mind, you have the mental factor aspiration that aspires for complete enlightenment. It's hard, isn't it? Well, kind of, I think that probably.
I sort of lost that last twist, that last bend.
Well, I said it again. I said it basically what you've said. So you were not wrong, but I just wanted to say it more precisely, just to distinguish between mental factors and main minds. Yeah. Yeah. Now, why I'm kind of the reason for separating them in this way is, first of all, because we want to know this is how it is explained in scripture. So if we want to have a more precise understanding of the way that it is explained in teaching, right? When we say that when it is said that it is a mind that possesses the two aspirations, then we'll know what it means. This is the causal aspiration. It's compassion. It is the one that aspires for sentient beings' freedom from suffering. The accompanying aspiration, that's the aspiration for complete enlightenment. You put it together with, it is a mind that is intent on the state of enlightenment for the benefit of others as its aid. So we have a couple of questions here. I thought there could be one mental factor of aspiration in the main mind of bodhicitta. You thought correctly. This is what I said, that bodhicitta can have only one mental factor aspiration, the accompanying aspiration together with it. The one that preceded it was the mental factor aspiration, that is compassion, but it is not together in the same retinue with the mind of enlightenment, because then you would end up with having two aspirations functioning at the same time with a primary consciousness. So there could be only one, and therefore the one that accompanies bodhicitta is the one that is focusing on and seeking great enlightenment, complete enlightenment. The thing that caused it is great compassion, or the mental factor aspiration that was intent on sentient beings' freedom from suffering. So Sherab is saying one is causal before it, the second is with it. Thank you very much, that's correct. That's a simple way of stating that. Before that also Sherab said, I think we have to say great compassion as it must be impartial. Yeah, we are speaking about great compassion. So we said that, I think that probably Anisherab is referring to stages 5 and 6, where I said that we have the causal aspiration, which is compassion. It is great compassion, right? It has to be great compassion. All right, so that was just an introduction to the two aspirations. And what I will do tomorrow is, we're running out of time, just going to put it on the screen so that, if you have any questions, then you don't have, yeah, I'll put it on the Dropbox straight after the session. And so tomorrow we will look at the definitions. So the definition of the conventional mind of enlightenment, the definition of the ultimate mind of enlightenment, then the definition of aspiring and engaging mind of enlightenment. I'm not sure that we'll be able to cover all those definitions in one session, because I think that they require some pulling apart, breaking them into different parts and sections. So we'll try to do it in order to develop more clarity about what it is. Another thing that I wanted to say, kind of in continuing on with the question, why are we talking about those two aspirations? The reason also for breaking it down into looking at it in a more precise way, what is the main mind, what is the mental factor, is that the more you understand what the mental factors are that you need to develop, that you need to train it, that you need to give rise to, I think that the more you can streamline your own practice, right? If the aspiration, the causal aspiration is create compassion, and then that gives rise to the accompanying aspiration, which seeks the state of enlightenment, then you think to yourself, there are those two things that I was able to isolate, to separate, those two aspirations. Now, how do I train myself in developing those two aspirations? One is the cause, one is together with bodhicitta. So you have better ability to, I think, streamline your own personal practice if you become precise with it. Before we leave it here for now, just maybe I'm going to steal 2 more minutes of your time. Do we have any pujas after that?
Oh, we have our practices.
All right, so I'll just steal a couple of minutes. So, because I also wanted to address a question that Desh and Molly had in Geshe-la's class. So we spoke about the different classifications of bodhicitta, right? So we have aspiring, engaging, ultimate, conventional, 22, 4, and so forth. So I just wanted maybe to put it on a chart, and we'll look again at the chart tomorrow. I will also put that on the Dropbox. But I thought maybe if for those of you who do some reading today, or will do some reading tomorrow, it's good just to prepare to that. So you could say that the main classification of bodhicitta is into conventional bodhicitta and ultimate bodhicitta. That's the main classification. Conventional bodhicitta is what we normally speak about. It is the wish for complete enlightenment for the benefits of others as its aid. That's really general way of speaking of bodhicitta. And ultimate bodhicitta, and I will mention it tomorrow, so don't be too stressed if you don't get it now. Ultimate bodhicitta is a perceptual realization of emptiness in the mind stream of an Arya Bodhisattva. Or a Mahayana Arya, I would say, sorry. It is a perceptual realization of emptiness in the mind stream of the Mahayana Arya. Then conventional bodhicitta can be classified in different ways. So I put down 3 ways of classifying that. It's not that, it's just, you can either speak about the aspiring and engaging mind of enlightenment. That's a classification according to the nature of bodhicitta. Then you have another classification that uses analogies, right? So in the ornament for clear realization of in 70 topics, as Geshe-la mentioned today, which is a summary of the ornament for clear realization, you have 22 analogies that is used for bodhicitta, and then they're used along different stages of progression from the Mahayana path of accumulation all the way up to when you attain the state of Buddha. So there are 22 stages. Each one of them has an analogy. So you have 22 analogies of the mind of enlightenment. It is like gold, it is like earth, it is like cloud, it is like this or like that. So this is another way of classifying bodhicitta. And the third way of classifying bodhicitta is according to a range, right? So when it ranges between the small part of the path of accumulation through to, I think, the end of the path of preparation, I'm not sure, I think so. It is one type of mind of enlightenment. Then you have another range of the mind of enlightenment, 4 ranges altogether. So I'll still have to check those ranges, but you have a classification of bodhicitta according to its range.
Which is the grounds and paths. Yeah.
Yes. And also you find it also in the ornament and grounds and paths, the ornament. And I guess that grounds and paths is based on the ornament. All right, so let's leave it here for now. Sorry for giving you a headache, but I will continue with that tomorrow. So let's put the prayers on the board, if I find it. There it is. It's not this. Nyododa lama sangye drugyone dowachikya lupa de salagopa sho. Chorimpoche make mama kigyochi. Kyavanya bambe pai. Gone gondo pelwa sho. Kowe shinkandi. Pendande wa malu chumweme. Chenre siwan tenzing yatsoi. Shape site baldo tengyochi. Tutsu jan shin jan bun gawe. Tenzing kyong pewe konso do kotse. Shosun kowe me mundu do. Pada soto te kondo shaten sho. Thank you. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Pram.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Peace and love.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.